Imagine walking into a luxurious hotel, the kind with glittering chandeliers and marble floors, where every detail screams wealth and prestige. You're dressed to impress, carrying yourself with confidence, ready to check in. But the moment you step up to the desk, the clerk looks at you like you're lost, like you couldn't possibly belong in a place this grand. That's exactly what happened to Maya Ellison, a black woman who walked into the Grand Willow Hotel expecting a warm welcome but got a cold shoulder instead. The clerk, dripping with attitude, dismissed her reservation, questioned her presence, and assumed she was out of place, all because of the color of her skin. Sounds infuriating, right? We've all felt that sting of being judged unfairly, written off before we could even speak. But here's where it gets good. Maya isn't just any guest. She's hiding a secret that's about to turn this smug clerk's world upside down. What happens when the truth comes out will leave you cheering, shocked, and ready to hit that replay button. Stick with us, because this story of justice and power is one you won't forget. The lobby of the Grand Willow Hotel shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, their light bouncing off polished marble floors and sleek mahogany furniture. It was the kind of place that screamed old money and older traditions, where every detail, from the soft clink of wine glasses to the faint scent of lavender in the air, felt curated for a certain kind of guest. The kind with deep pockets and the right last name. Maya Ellison stepped through the revolving glass doors, her heels clicking softly against the floor, a leather briefcase in one hand and a quiet confidence in her stride. She was dressed sharply, a tailored blazer, crisp white shirt, and a silk scarf that caught the light just so. Her dark skin glowed under the warm lighting, and her eyes, sharp and observant, took in every detail of the room. To anyone watching, she was just another traveler, maybe here for a conference or a weekend getaway. But Maya was no ordinary guest, and tonight, this hotel was about to learn that the hard way. She approached the front desk, where a young clerk named Ethan stood, his tie slightly askew, his fingers tapping impatiently on the counter. He barely looked up as Maya set her briefcase down, his eyes flicking over her with a quick, dismissive glance. "Checking in?" he asked, his tone flat, like he'd already decided she didn't belong here. Maya smiled, polite but firm, and slid her ID across the counter. "Yes, reservation under Ellison," she said, her voice smooth, carrying the kind of authority that comes from years of proving yourself in rooms where you're underestimated. Ethan took the ID, his lips pursing as he scanned it, then typed something into his computer with exaggerated slowness. The lobby hummed around them, guests in tailored suits sipping cocktails, a bellhop pushing a gleaming cart, the soft hum of jazz drifting from hidden speakers. Maya stood patiently, but she felt the familiar weight of scrutiny, the way Ethan's eyes lingered on her a little too long, like he was trying to figure out what she was doing in a place like this. She'd felt that look before, countless times, in boardrooms, restaurants, and yes, hotels. It was the look that said, "You don't fit." But Maya had spent her life turning those looks into opportunities, and tonight was no different. I'm not seeing your reservation," Ethan said finally, leaning back in his chair with a faint smirk. "You sure you got the right hotel?" His tone carried a hint of condescension, the kind that might go unnoticed by someone less attuned to it. Maya's smile didn't waver, but her eyes sharpened, catching the subtle jab. "I'm sure," she said, her voice steady. "Could you check again?" Ethan sighed, loud enough to make it clear he was annoyed, and tapped a few more keys, his movements slow and deliberate, like he was doing her a favor. The air between them grew heavier, the kind of tension that builds when someone's already made up their mind about you. Maya glanced around the lobby, noting the other guests gliding through without a second glance from the staff. She could feel the weight of the moment, the quiet challenge in Ethan's posture, the way he assumed he held all the power here. But he didn't know who she was, not yet. And when he found out, this pristine lobby was about to become the stage for a reckoning he'd never see coming. Maya stood at the front desk of the Grand Willow Hotel, her fingers resting lightly on the polished counter, her briefcase a silent sentinel at her side. The chandelier light danced across the marble floor, but the warmth of the lobby felt distant now, overshadowed by the chill in Ethan's tone. The clerk's eyes flicked back to his computer screen, his fingers tapping with a performative slowness that grated on Maya's nerves. She knew this game, had played it too many times before. The subtle dismissal, the assumption that she didn't belong, the way he leaned back in his chair like he was doing her a favor by even checking the system. It wasn't just about a missing reservation. It was about the way he looked at her, like her presence in this upscale hotel was a glitch in the system. "I'm still not seeing anything under Ellison," Ethan said, his voice dripping with a mix of boredom and skepticism. He slid her ID back across the counter, not bothering to make eye contact. "Maybe you booked at the Willow Inn down the street? Happens all the time." The suggestion was laced with condescension, as if Maya couldn't possibly have the means, or the sense, to book a room at a place like this. She felt the familiar sting of being underestimated, but she kept her expression neutral, her smile a carefully crafted shield. "No, it's definitely the Grand Willow," she said, her voice calm but firm, like steel wrapped in silk. "I made the reservation myself. Could you check one more time? Maybe under a corporate account?" Ethan let out a huff, his eyes rolling just enough to be noticed. "Corporate account, huh?" he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. He typed again, his movements exaggerated, like he was humoring her. The lobby buzzed around them, guests checking in smoothly, their reservations found without question, their presence unquestioned. A white couple in designer coats breezed past, and Ethan gave them a quick nod and a smile, the kind he hadn't bothered to offer Maya. The contrast wasn't lost on her. She'd seen it before, in countless spaces where her skin made her a question mark instead of a guest. "Look, ma'am," Ethan said, leaning forward now, his tone sharper, "if there's no reservation, there's nothing I can do. Maybe you should call whoever made the booking and figure it out." His words were polite on the surface, but the implication was clear, he thought she was wasting his time. Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. She'd dealt with people like Ethan her whole life, gatekeepers who assumed she was out of place, who saw her degrees, her success, her confidence, and still looked for reasons to doubt her. But she wasn't here to beg for a room. She was here for something much bigger, and Ethan was about to find that out the hard way. Before she could respond, a woman in a crisp hotel uniform approached the desk, her name tag reading, Claire, assistant manager. Her expression was professional but guarded, like she'd sensed the tension from across the lobby. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her eyes darting between Maya and Ethan. The clerk straightened, his smirk fading slightly, but he didn't miss a beat. "No problem, just a mix-up," he said, gesturing toward Maya. "She says she has a reservation, but I can't find it. Probably booked the wrong hotel." Claire's gaze shifted to Maya, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe, or unease. "Let me take a look," she said, stepping behind the counter and nudging Ethan aside. She typed quickly, her brow furrowing as she scanned the screen. Maya watched her, noting the way Claire's fingers hesitated, the way her eyes flicked up to meet Maya's for just a second before returning to the computer. "What's the name again?" Claire asked, her tone polite but clipped. "Ellison." "Maya Ellison," Maya replied, her voice steady, her eyes locked on Claire's. She could feel the weight of the moment building, the quiet hum of anticipation in her chest. She knew what was coming, even if Ethan and Claire didn't. The lobby seemed to slow around them, the clink of glasses and murmur of voices fading into the background. A few guests nearby had started to notice the exchange, their heads turning, their conversations pausing. Maya could sense their curiosity, their unspoken questions. What's going on? Why is this taking so long? She didn't mind the attention. In fact, she welcomed it. This wasn't just about a room, it was about respect, about dismantling the assumptions that had followed her for years. Claire frowned at the screen, her fingers tapping faster now. "That's strange," she muttered, almost to herself. "There's nothing under Ellison, but," she trailed off, her eyes narrowing as she clicked through another tab. Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice low but clear. "Try checking under the executive accounts." You might find something there." Her words carried a quiet authority, a hint that she knew more than she was letting on. Claire glanced up, her expression shifting from confusion to something closer to caution. Ethan, meanwhile, crossed his arms, his smirk returning. "Executive accounts?" he said, his tone mocking. "Come on, lady, let's not waste everyone's time." Maya didn't take the bait. She stood taller, her briefcase still at her side, her posture radiating a confidence that made Ethan's smirk falter, just for a second. She could see the cracks forming in his bravado, the way his eyes flicked to Claire, looking for backup. But Claire was too focused on the screen, her fingers now frozen as she stared at something that made her breath catch. "Hold on," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This can't be right." She looked up at Maya, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and uncertainty. Maya's smile widened, just enough to hint at what was coming. She could feel the tide turning, the moment when everything would flip. Ethan didn't know it yet, but he was standing on the edge of a cliff, and Maya was about to push him over. The lobby of the Grand Willow Hotel buzzed with a quiet energy, but at the front desk, the air was thick with tension. Maya Ellison stood tall, her briefcase a silent anchor at her side, her dark eyes locked on Claire, the assistant manager, whose face had gone pale as she stared at the computer screen. Ethan, the clerk, leaned against the counter, his arms crossed, his smirk fading into something closer to unease. He could sense the shift, even if he didn't understand it yet. The soft jazz in the background felt distant now, drowned out by the weight of the moment. A small crowd had started to gather near the desk, guests in tailored suits, a bellhop pausing with his cart, a woman in a red dress clutching her purse, all drawn by the quiet drama unfolding. Their whispers rippled through the air, curious and expectant, like an audience waiting for the curtain to rise. Claire's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her brow furrowed as she clicked through the system. This says you're listed under the executive account for Ellison Enterprises," she said, her voice low, almost disbelieving. She looked up at Maya, her eyes searching for confirmation. "Is that correct?" Maya's smile was calm, almost serene, but there was a fire in it, a spark that said she was in control. "That's right," she said, her voice smooth and deliberate. "Ellison Enterprises. I'm sure it's all there if you look closely." Her words were polite, but they carried a weight that made Claire swallow hard. Ethan scoffed, his confidence trying to claw its way back. "Ellison Enterprises? What, you're some kind of VIP now?" His tone was sharp, meant to cut, but it only made him sound desperate. Maya didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing just enough to make Ethan shift uncomfortably. "Something like that," she said, her voice cool but laced with a challenge that made the air crackle. The crowd's whispers grew louder, a few people leaning closer, their phones now discreetly raised, capturing the exchange. Maya could feel their eyes on her, their curiosity feeding the moment, but she kept her focus on Claire and Ethan, the two players in this unfolding drama. Claire clicked again, her face growing paler as she read something on the screen. "It says here you're the primary contact for the account," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "And there's a note about a special arrangement." She looked up at Maya, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and dread. Maya nodded, her smile widening just enough to hint at what was coming. "That's correct," she said. "Why don't you read the note? It might clear things up." Her tone was polite, almost encouraging, but there was an edge to it, a quiet promise that this was about to get interesting. Ethan rolled his eyes, his impatience boiling over. "Come on, Claire, this is ridiculous," he snapped, stepping closer to the screen. "She's probably just bluffing." "There's no way," he stopped dead as Claire held up a hand, her expression shifting to something close to panic. "Ethan, stop," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through his bravado. She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes scanning the text, and her breath caught. "This says, oh my God." She looked up at Maya, her face a mask of shock. "You're Maya Ellison. As in, the Maya Ellison. The name hung in the air like a thunderclap, and Ethan's smirk vanished completely. He stared at Claire, then at Maya, his mouth opening but no words coming out. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a ripple of excitement passing through them. A man in a navy blazer whispered to his wife, "Ellison. Like the company that just bought this place?" His wife nodded, her eyes wide, her phone still recording. Maya stood perfectly still, her presence commanding the room without effort. She could feel the tide turning, the moment when Ethan's assumptions were about to crash down around him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan demanded, his voice rising, but there was a crack in it now, a hint of fear. He turned to Claire, his eyes darting to the screen. "What's the note say?" Claire didn't answer right away, her fingers trembling as she scrolled. "It says," she began, her voice shaky, "that Maya Ellison is to be treated as the primary owner representative for all hotel operations, effective immediately. All staff are to report to her for," she trailed off, her eyes flicking up to meet Maya's, who nodded slightly, urging her to continue. "For the transition period following the acquisition of the Grand Willow by Ellison Enterprises." The lobby went silent, the jazz fading into a distant hum. Ethan's face drained of color, his hands dropping to his sides. "Acquisition?" he stammered, his voice barely audible. "You mean, she's..." He turned to Maya, his eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and dawning horror. Maya's smile was unwavering, her posture radiating a quiet power that filled the room. "That's right," she said, her voice clear and commanding. "I'm the new owner of the Grand Willow Hotel. And you, Ethan, have just made a very poor first impression." The crowd gasped, a wave of murmurs and stifled laughter rippling through them. The woman in the red dress whispered, "Oh, he's done for," to the man next to her, who nodded, his phone still raised. Ethan took a step back, his hands fumbling for the counter like he needed something to hold on to. This is a mistake," he said, his voice shaking. "You can't be. I mean, you didn't say," Maya cut him off, her voice sharp but controlled. "I didn't say because I didn't have to," she said. "I gave you my name, my ID, and my reservation. You chose to assume I didn't belong here. That's on you." Claire stepped back, her face a mix of embarrassment and respect. "Ms. Ellison, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice genuine. "I had no idea." "If I'd known," Maya raised a hand, silencing her gently. "It's not about you knowing, Claire," she said. "It's about how you treat people when you don't know. I came here tonight to see how this hotel runs, to meet the staff, to understand what needs to change. And I've already learned plenty." Her eyes flicked to Ethan, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the marble floor. The crowd was buzzing now, their phones capturing every word, every glance. Maya could feel their support, their outrage on her behalf, but she didn't need it. She'd spent years building her empire, climbing over barriers like Ethan's assumptions, turning doubt into fuel. She'd bought this hotel not just as an investment, but as a statement, a place where everyone would be welcome, where no one would be turned away because of who they were. And Ethan, with his smug smirk and snap judgments, was the first obstacle in her path. "Ms. Ellison," Claire said, her voice steadying, "what would you like us to do?" Maya's eyes softened slightly as she looked at Claire, recognizing someone who was at least willing to listen. "For now, get me checked in," she said. "And then we're going to have a staff meeting. All of you." Her gaze swept over Ethan, who was still frozen, his face a mask of panic. "We've got a lot to discuss about how this hotel treats its guests." The crowd murmured in approval, a few clapping softly, their phones still rolling. Maya picked up her briefcase, her movements deliberate, her presence unshakable. The stage was set, and Ethan was about to learn just how costly his assumptions had been. The Grand Willow Hotel's lobby felt like a theater in the midst of a climactic scene, the air charged with anticipation as Maya Ellison stood at the center of it all. Her briefcase rested on the counter, a silent symbol of her authority, while her dark eyes held Ethan, the clerk, in a gaze that was both calm and unrelenting. The crowd of onlookers, guests in tailored suits, a bellhop frozen mid-step, a woman in a red dress still clutching her phone, stood riveted, their whispers fading into a hush. The soft jazz that had filled the room earlier was now a distant hum, drowned out by the weight of Maya's words, "I'm the new owner of the Grand Willow Hotel. And you, Ethan, have just made a very poor first impression." Ethan's face was a mask of shock, his mouth opening and closing like he was grasping for words that wouldn't come. Claire, the assistant manager, stood behind the counter, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes darting between Maya and Ethan as if she could sense the storm about to break. Ethan took another step back, his shoulders slumping as the reality of his mistake sank in. His earlier bravado, the smirk, the dismissive tone, the assumption that Maya didn't belong, was crumbling under the weight of her presence. This isn't right," he stammered, his voice barely audible, his eyes flicking to the crowd for some kind of lifeline. But the crowd wasn't on his side. A man in a navy blazer muttered to his wife, "He's toast," and she nodded, her phone still recording, capturing every second of Ethan's unraveling. The woman in the red dress leaned forward, whispering to another guest, "She owns the place." "Oh, this is good." Their excitement was palpable, a shared sense of justice unfolding before them, and Maya could feel it, like a current running through the room. She stepped closer to the counter, her movements deliberate, her voice steady but carrying a fire that made everyone lean in. "Let's get one thing straight, Ethan," she said, her tone cutting through the tension like a blade. "This hotel is a place for everyone, every guest, every story, every background. But you saw me walk in, saw my skin, and decided I didn't fit your picture of who belongs here. That's not just a mistake. That's a choice. And choices have consequences." Her words landed like a punch, and Ethan flinched, his hands fumbling for the edge of the counter as if it could anchor him. The crowd murmured in agreement, a few nodding, their phones still raised, their eyes locked on Maya. Claire, still standing behind the counter, cleared her throat, her voice shaky but professional. "Ms. Ellison, I'll get your check-in processed right away," she said, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. "And I'll make sure the staff is ready for the meeting you mentioned." She glanced at Ethan, her expression a mix of pity and frustration, but she didn't linger on him. Maya nodded, her eyes softening slightly as she looked at Claire. "Thank you, Claire," she said. "I appreciate that. Let's make sure my suite is ready, and then we'll talk about how things are going to change around here." Her tone was firm but not unkind, a reminder that she was here to lead, not just to punish. Ethan, however, wasn't ready to let go of his defenses. "You can't just fire me or whatever," he blurted, his voice rising with a mix of desperation and defiance. "I was doing my job. I didn't know who you were." The words tumbled out, clumsy and unconvincing, and the crowd's murmurs turned to soft laughter, a ripple of disbelief at his audacity. Maya raised an eyebrow, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Your job," she said, her voice low and deliberate, "is to treat every guest with respect. Not just the ones you think look the part. You didn't know who I was because you didn't bother to check. You saw me and made up your mind. That's not doing your job, that's failing at it." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of cheers and claps echoing through the lobby. The man in the navy blazer called out, "You tell him." And the woman in the red dress nodded vigorously, her phone still rolling. Ethan's face reddened, his hands clenching into fists, but he didn't dare respond. Maya's presence was too commanding, her authority too undeniable. She turned to the crowd, her expression softening into something almost warm, but still resolute. "I'm not here to tear anyone down," she said, her voice carrying over the applause. "I'm here to build something better. This hotel, this town, it's going to be a place where everyone feels welcome. But that starts with accountability, and it starts right now." She turned back to Ethan, her eyes locking onto his. "You're not fired, Ethan, not yet," she said, her voice steady but firm. "But you're on notice. You're going to attend that staff meeting, and you're going to listen. If you can't learn to treat every guest with the respect they deserve, you won't have a place here. Understood? Ethan nodded, his face a mix of shame and resentment, but he didn't speak. He couldn't. The weight of the moment had stripped him of his usual bravado, leaving him exposed in front of the crowd, the staff, and Maya. Claire finished typing, her hands trembling slightly as she handed Maya a keycard. "Your suite is ready, Ms. Ellison," she said, her voice steadier now. "The presidential suite, top floor, as requested. I've also notified the staff about the meeting. It's set for 8 a.m. tomorrow." Maya took the keycard, her fingers brushing against Claire's for a moment. "Thank you, Claire," she said, her tone genuine. "I'm looking forward to working with you." The words were a subtle acknowledgement of Claire's professionalism, a contrast to Ethan's failure, and Claire nodded, a flicker of pride in her eyes. Maya picked up her briefcase, her movements graceful but purposeful, and turned to head toward the elevators. The crowd parted for her, their phones still raised, their faces a mix of awe and admiration. She could feel their support, their shared sense of justice, and it fueled her. She'd bought the Grand Willow Hotel not just as a business move, but as a mission. She'd grown up in a world where doors were closed to her, where her ambition was met with skepticism, her success with surprise. Every step of her journey, from scholarship kid to CEO of Ellison Enterprises, had been a fight against assumptions like Ethan's. And now, standing in this lobby, she was rewriting the rules. As she reached the elevators, a young woman in a hotel uniform, a housekeeper, judging by her apron, approached hesitantly. "Ms. Ellison?" she said, her voice soft but steady. "I just want to say, thank you. I've worked here for years, and I've seen how some guests get treated better than others. What you did just now, it means a lot." Her eyes were bright, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Maya smiled, a real smile this time, not the polished one she'd used with Ethan. "What's your name?" she asked. "Lila," the woman replied. Maya nodded, her eyes warm. "Lila, you're part of this place now. If you see something wrong, you come to me. We're going to make this right, together." Lila's face lit up, and she nodded, stepping back as Maya pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open with a soft ding, and Maya stepped inside, turning to face the lobby one last time. The crowd was still watching, their phones capturing the moment, their murmurs a mix of excitement and respect. Ethan stood frozen behind the counter, his face a mask of humiliation, while Claire busied herself with the computer, her posture straighter now, like she'd found her footing. Maya's eyes swept over them all, a silent promise that this was just the beginning. The elevator doors began to close, but before they did, she raised her keycard slightly, a final gesture of authority. The crowd erupted in applause again, their cheers echoing as the doors sealed shut, carrying Maya to the top floor, and to the next chapter of her mission. The elevator hummed softly as it carried Maya Ellison to the top floor of the Grand Willow Hotel, the soft glow of the lights casting a warm halo around her. She stood alone, her briefcase still in hand, her reflection sharp in the polished metal doors. The weight of the moment lingered, not as a burden, but as a spark, a reminder of why she'd fought so hard to get here. The lobby confrontation with Ethan was already fading into the past, but its echoes would ripple through the hotel, through Willow Creek, and beyond. By morning, the videos from the crowd's phones would be all over X, their grainy footage spreading her story faster than she could have planned. Hotel clerk shamed by new owner, or racist clerk gets a reality check, she could almost see the clickbait headlines. But Maya wasn't here for viral fame. She was here to change things, to make this hotel a place where no one would feel the sting of being dismissed like she had tonight. As the elevator doors slid open, revealing the plush hallway of the presidential suite, Maya stepped out, her heels sinking into the thick carpet. The suite was a masterpiece of luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the twinkling town below, a sprawling living area with velvet furniture, and a faint scent of jasmine in the air. She set her briefcase on a glass table, her fingers lingering on its handle for a moment. This wasn't just a room, it was a symbol of everything she'd built, everything she'd overcome. Growing up, she'd been the kid who worked 3 jobs to pay for college, the one teachers overlooked, the one who was told she'd never make it in a world of old money and closed doors. But here she was, not just a guest, but the owner, rewriting the rules for everyone who'd come after her. She walked to the window, gazing out at Willow Creek's quiet streets. Tomorrow's staff meeting would set the tone for her vision. Ethan would be there, probably sulking, maybe defensive, but she meant what she'd said, he wasn't fired yet. People could change, and Maya believed in second chances, but only for those willing to learn. She'd seen his type before, people who clung to their biases like life rafts, afraid to face a world where their assumptions didn't hold. But she'd also seen people like Lila, the housekeeper, whose quiet gratitude had reminded her why this fight mattered. Lila, and others like her, were the heart of this hotel, and Maya was determined to make sure they were heard. By morning, the news of her ownership would spread through the staff like wildfire. There'd be whispers, maybe some pushback from those who didn't like change, but Maya was ready. She'd already scheduled a review of the hotel's policies, starting with how guests were treated at check-in. No more snap judgments, no more profiling based on appearance or name. She'd bring in training programs, hire a diverse management team, and make sure every employee knew that respect wasn't optional, it was mandatory. Ethan's mistake wasn't just personal, it was a symptom of a deeper problem, one Maya was here to fix. And if he couldn't adapt, he'd be out. The Grand Willow was her house now, and she was setting new rules. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from her assistant, videos are already trending on X, staff meetings on everyone's radar. You good? Maya smiled, typing a quick reply, better than good. Ready for tomorrow. She set the phone down, her mind already turning to the bigger picture. This hotel wasn't just a business, it was a statement. A place where everyone could walk through the doors and feel valued, no matter who they were. She thought of her younger self, the girl who'd been turned away from fancy restaurants, who'd been followed in stores, who'd had to fight twice as hard for half the respect. This was for her, and for every person who'd ever felt that same sting. Maya sank into a plush armchair, kicking off her heels and letting the tension of the night ease from her shoulders. Tomorrow would be a long day, meetings, reviews, maybe even a press conference if the social media buzz grew loud enough. But for now, she let herself breathe, let herself savor the victory. The Grand Willow was hers, and with it, the chance to make a difference. She thought of the crowd in the lobby, their cheers, their phones capturing a moment of justice. They'd carry that story with them, share it with friends, post it online, and maybe, just maybe, it would inspire someone else to stand up, to demand better. To everyone watching this, think about the times you've been judged before you could even speak, written off because of how you look or where you're from. Those moments hurt, but they also light a fire. They remind you what you're capable of, what you can change when you refuse to stay silent. Maya Ellison didn't just walk into that lobby, she claimed it, turned it into a stage for justice. So, what's your stage? What's the moment you took a stand, or wish you had? Drop it in the comments, I want to hear your stories. And if this hit home, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more. We're building something here, and you're part of it. Let's make every space a place where everyone belongs.